did exactly as he promised when he began the arduous task of trying to denuclearize Kim Jong-un's North Korean regime. Kim tried insults and threats rather than honest negotiation, and President Trump withdrew the United States from any further discussion of a summit meeting with the Chinese puppet. Little Rocket Man now faces a stark choice: get serious about denuclearization or face the prospect of obliteration. We take it up tonight with Dr. Sebastian Gorka, Congressman Lee Zeldin, who sits on the House Foreign Affairs Committee. And today, the corrupt origins of Spygate revealed, at least to some. Lawmakers from both parties, the so-called Gang of Eight, briefed on the origins of the Obama administration spying on the Trump campaign. The criminal deep state intelligence operation led by Obama's spy masters, making this scandal the worst in American presidential history. We take up the developments in that scandal with former FBI Assistant Director James Kallstrom and Chris Farrell of Judicial Watch, and the evil cartels that profit from the crisis on our southern border. We take a look tonight at what the Trump administration is doing to stop the wave of crime, deadly drugs, and illegal immigrants, while rhinos and Dems insist on assisting the cartels by keeping our borders wide open, demanding amnesty, and publicly embracing the murderous thugs of MS-13. Our top story: President Trump today canceled the planned summit with the North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, planned for the 12th of next month. President Trump declared that summit ended, and he sent an open letter to Kim this morning after the Chinese pet insulted Vice President Pence and threatened a nuclear showdown with the United States. In his letter, President Trump wrote, "I was very much looking forward to being there with you. Sadly, based on the tremendous anger and open hostility displayed in your most recent statement, I feel it is inappropriate at this time to have this long-planned meeting."
Based on the recent statement of North Korea, I have decided to terminate the planned summit in Singapore on June 12th. I believe that this is a tremendous setback for North Korea and indeed a setback for the world. Our very strong sanctions, by far the strongest sanctions ever imposed, pressure campaign will continue as it has been continuing. Hopefully, positive things will be taking place with respect to the future of North Korea. But if they don't, we are more ready than we have ever been before.
The president made it clear the U.S. military is prepared to act should Kim provoke or further threaten our allies and the United States. Joining us tonight, Fox News national security strategist, former strategist to President Trump, Dr. Sebastian Gorka. Dr. Gorka, let's start with the president's decision to withdraw from that June 12th summit and make it very clear that the U.S. military simultaneously is prepared to act. Your thoughts about the president's very clear statement and choice for Kim?
Well, your introductory monologue hit all the key points. Not only was the regime rude and insulting to the White House and to the vice president, they actually threatened nuclear war. This is incredibly important, a point the mainstream media seems to miss. And as such, the president did what he said he would do all along. If the conditions are not ripe for a meaningful meeting, he's going to walk away from the deal. He's always said that. He mentioned it 4 days ago. He wrote it in his book, The Art of the Deal. Never be so vested in a potential deal that you're not prepared to walk away at any point. And North Korea has reverted to type, and they are playing games, and this is the wrong administration to play games with.
And following that, I just want to share this report from the Washington Post, in which they are now reporting North Korea says it is ready to talk to the United States at any time, responding to Trump's cancellation of the summit with Kim Jong-un. I think the expression is, that didn't take long, did it?
Well, if you read the whole letter, the letter is tough
the president's
at the beginning. Yeah, the president's letter. It's very tough, but in the second half, it's incredibly gracious, and it says, I will sit down and I will talk to you if the conditions change and if you show a willingness to act in good faith. So nothing was closed down today. The right decision was taken, and lo and behold, as your show opens, we hear the news that maybe they've realized the mistake that they made, and it's not going to be the 12th. It may still be Singapore, but the talks may be back on track already, Lou.
It is a very quick response. It is also, as this president has said throughout, we'll see. At every turn and twist, we have watched a duping of one president after another. This president will certainly not follow in that a line of presidents. He's made that clear. It is interesting to watch the Secretary of State in this, who started talking yesterday about giving the North Koreans civilian nuclear power. This is reminiscent of what Clinton did, President Bill Clinton did 30 years ago, and it was a disastrous policy change. And I find it stunning that the Secretary of State would even be articulating such a thing.
Well, even the president has offered to give some kind of guarantees to North Korea. And at the end of the day, even if it is a dictatorial regime that persecutes people for their political beliefs, this has to be a two-way conversation.
Wait.
So
the president hasn't guaranteed in any form nuclear power for civilian authorities in North Korea. And that's quite a different statement, particularly for one of the two largest state sponsors of terrorism on the globe.
No, I'm talking about the security guarantees that he potentially aired. But at the end of the day, something has to be attained by North Korea in exchange. But whatever the deal is, it's not going to be like the JCPOA Iran deal, where, for example, there could be no American inspectors. If there were to be inspections, they had to be announced a month in advance. So I know Mike Pompeo, he walks into these things with his eyes wide open, and he is in large part responsible for why we've got so far with North Korea already.
Well, he's certainly been amongst those. I don't think there's any question that the vast preponderance of the credit goes to this president. And I do find it stunning that Mike Pompeo, in office just a matter of weeks, has already started using the first person singular as if he were working for President Obama rather than President Donald Trump, who is always without exception, in my experience, he talks about America, Americans, we. And suddenly we have a newly minted Secretary of State who is talking about himself in the first person, singular. It is, to me, off-putting. Your thoughts?
Lou, you have nothing to worry about. I know this man personally.
I'm annoyed. It's a difference.
You shouldn't be. You shouldn't be. This individual, you know, I've broken bread with this man in the White House. He's a complete loyalist to the president. He's a tough-hearted charger.
The next time you do, ask him for the good manners to acknowledge that the man who makes the policy is the president of the United States, and first person should be reserved accordingly.
Oh, he knows that.
Okay. Thank you so much. Appreciate it, Dr. Sebastian Gorka, as always. Up next, the Department of Justice and the FBI briefing lawmakers on the origins of the growing Spygate scandal, already the worst in this country's history. Chris Farrell of Judicial Watch joins us next. Stay with us.
This program is brought to you by Progressive.
And Department of Justice officials giving lawmakers classified briefings on the origins of Spygate, presumably the Obama administration operation that used one or more spies to surveil President Trump's 2016 presidential campaign. Today's briefing, initially meant for Republican leaders of the House Intelligence and Oversight Committees, Devin Nunes and Trey Gowdy. The Department of Justice, however, agreed then to brief the bipartisan so-called Gang of Eight in a separate meeting after Democratic lawmakers who claim there is no Spygate whined and complained about not being briefed about it at all. Joining us tonight, Chris Farrell, Director of Research Investigation for Judicial Watch. Chris, it's unclear what they saw, what they were briefed on, what they actually witnessed with their own eyes.
I think this is a Justice Department expectations management meeting. They wanted to be able to say, hey, look, we were forthcoming and we held meetings and we briefed you. But I have a very high percentage belief that it was all very controlled and contrived, that it was carefully managed, that the Justice Department and FBI were less than forthcoming. And it sort of allowed all the parties to say, oh, yes, we met and we talked about it. But I doubt very seriously whether Mr. Nunes and Mr. Gowdy are entirely satisfied with the answers they got.
How soon will we find out?
As soon as they hold a press conference. I mean, I would encourage them not to be shy. I don't want them, obviously, to violate any security, restrictions. But they can certainly get in front of a camera and opine about how the meeting went, what was conducted, how frank they were, how many documents they saw. There's all sorts of details without discussing the actual substance that those gentlemen can convey to the public. And I think they have a duty to do so.
The president making it very clear he wants total transparency, absolute transparency on the Department of Justice and the FBI conduct, behavior, and its leadership particularly. I mean, the Department of Justice and the FBI have been stripped of some of their senior leadership, in some cases, in the FBI, all of it over the top 5 positions.
Yes.
And people are not even I mean, there's a debate with the Dems in Congress about whether or not they were culpable, whether they were guilty of breaching our Constitution and law. My God, what is the debate about? It's clear and straightforward.
Yeah, I mean, the Democrats at this point are chained to a story. And the problem is the story keeps shifting and rolling around and evolving because they can't get the story straight.
Because
they can't get of course, because they can't get the story straight. So you have to keep playing double talk word games to try to get around it. The president, and I would encourage the president to do this, with a stroke of a pen, he can order the release of these documents. He doesn't have to talk about it or around it or kind of hope out loud that someone does something. He can have it happen with the stroke of a pen. It's discretionary on his part.
And as we look at what is happening, John Brennan writing all sorts of nonsense, whether it's on Twitter.
He's lost his mind. Yeah,
I couldn't argue the point, certainly.
He's disgraced himself. I'm waiting for him to post a selfie, of himself wrapped in the American flag. He's gone off the deep end. And the reason why is because he's terrified. He's been caught. And more to be revealed. And
Robert Mueller, what state is his mind in? What state is his investigation? It's been 2 years with the FBI investigation that preceded it by almost a year, and now the more than a year since Robert Mueller was made special counsel and has carried out an investigation that's produced exactly nothing.
Yeah, now agents are purportedly, they've been dispatched to Israel to run down leads. I thought this was about Russian collusion.
Yeah.
This is a slow motion deflation. He's going to have to get a couple of scalps to say he did what he did. But of course, half the indictments are Russians who'll never set foot in the United States. So I think I'd like to believe it's winding down because there is no there. But it's such a political football.
That also would presume a lot of integrity on the part of the special counsel, which obviously
and his staff, which is utterly compromised.
Right. It's stunning stuff to witness this. T.S. Ellis, the district court judge, who is going to rule, apparently, on whether or not the special counsel exceeded its mandate and its scope, envisioned at least under the August 2nd memorandum. We're still waiting, and he seemed to be the most animated and intelligent, frankly, judge to take up the issue. What do you expect, if anything at all?
Well, I mean, I believe what he says, and he's on the record from the bench expressing great skepticism about what the letter of the scope memo says versus the conduct of the special counsel. The 4 a.m. no-knock warrant against Manafort's house is a combination publicity stunt and threat It has no realm, it has no normal sort of existence in the ordinary scope of an investigation like this. And I think that Judge Ellis sees through it, and he knows that the cast of characters under Mueller will do virtually anything to get what they want.
Chris Farrell, Judicial Watch. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks, Lou.
Be sure to vote in our poll tonight. The question is, do you believe the only effective policy to end Kim Jong-un's nuclear threats and provocations is the use of military force? Cast your vote on Twitter at Lou Dobbs. Follow me on Twitter at Lou Dobbs. Like me on Facebook. Follow me on Instagram at Lou Dobbs Tonight. Up next, President Trump canceling his summit with Kim. Congressman Lee Zeldin of the House Foreign Affairs Committee joins us here next. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Trump canceled the North Korea summit over open hostility, as he put it, from Kim Jong-un and his regime. However, President Trump hinting that talks could begin again if North Korea.
That bright and beautiful future can only happen when the threat of nuclear weapons is removed. No way it can happen otherwise. If and when Kim Jong-un chooses to engage in constructive dialogue and actions, I am waiting.
And North Korea didn't wait very long, inviting a handful of journalists to observe as their nuclear site was, quote unquote, dismantled. We know 3 explosions took place, but there were no nuclear experts there, no weapons experts. And those who watched from afar, halfway around the globe, suggesting this is all more symbolic than practical, but that's the sort of blather that you hear from people who don't know anything. Some believe the Hermit Kingdom may have sites that they're not disclosing. And in 2008, they did blow up a cooling tower. Negotiations fell through nonetheless. Joining us tonight, Congressman Lee Zeldin. He serves on the House Foreign Affairs Committee. He's calling for the appointment of a second special counsel to investigate an absolutely corrupted Department of Justice and FBI leadership. Good to have you here, Congressman.
Great to be back.
It didn't take hours for the North Koreans to respond, and now they want to talk after the president said there will be no June 12th summit. Your thoughts?
It's important to treat our friends as our friends and our adversaries as our adversaries, understanding our adversaries do not respect weakness, they only respect strength. And when we say you can't be silent, it's not because we want wars, but it's because we want to make sure that we're able to prevent it. And the president, in approaching this entire situation in North Korea, knows that the North Koreans and these other nations will only respect the United States and President Trump if we go into it from a position of strength. And our hand just became stronger with the president showing a willingness not only to walk away from the summit if the North Koreans continue with these antics, and the Chinese possibly as well, but military force is an option. And with that being a real option, I think strengthens his hands as far as diplomacy and the economic pressure.
And the president conveyed today, I thought, absolutely no suggestion whatsoever of anger. He was constrained, even as he basically was threatening the North Koreans with their own destruction, and managed at the same time to validate again the terms of a summit, which are very straightforward. This president said it and said it again and again today. You will denuclearize, and that is non-negotiable.
And remember where we were just a few years ago. Yeah. President Obama negotiating with Iran and negotiating from a position of weakness. Red lines getting crossed. Iran using rhetoric like calling us the great Satan, chanting death to America, still legally test firing intercontinental ballistic missiles. And you remember when they took our sailors and embarrassed them with photos and videography.
Embarrassed this
nation. And Secretary Kerry said, thank you. That was his response.
That is an exact quote from Secretary of State Kerry. Thank you.
Thank you. President Trump, though, is showing that this is not that. He's setting red lines. He's being strong, but he was not provocative. Last August, when he was talking about fire and fury, the fact is, if North Korea attacked the United States, they would be met with fire and fury. And while we're here in
or any of our allies,
and we're here in our country and we're asking, is Kim Jong-un crazy enough? Is he to do this or to do that? I think Kim Jong-un was over North Korea saying, you know what, I think Donald Trump is crazy enough to attack me. And by making that military option look real, and with the state of the economy, and even in last August when Ambassador Haley and President Trump, they were able to get a unanimous UN Security Council resolution passed that even China and North Korea voted for.
You know, you've said President Trump is crazy enough. I think he's
I think Kim
smart
Jong-un
enough.
is saying that.
I think Kim Jong-un right now and his regime understand that this president is smart enough, determined enough, and courageous enough to do exactly what he is intimating. And I think that I've never seen a clearer example of the man's collected cool, his constraint than today, because he had to be furious in some measure. He did not in any way allow anyone to see that anger that he might possess, I would say almost surely possesses. But I think he has made his mind up, and I think that's got to scare the hell out of the Koreans. Yeah. And by the way, I think it scares the hell out of Xi Jinping. And I think he's learning a lesson here, perhaps a more profound lesson than even Kim Jong-un.
I will say this. First off, Kim Jong-un is known to be homicidal, not suicidal. And I think that's part of his calculation as well. And without disclosing any confidence, yesterday I traveled with President Trump to Long Island. And there were a couple of times while I was with him that I broached the topic of North Korea. And all I'll say is this. He knows exactly what he's doing. He is thinking through this. It is incredibly important to him, but it's very deliberate. And he's calm, cool, and collected and strong. And I believe that his decision today was necessary to let the North Koreans know that they are not in charge. Yeah. They're not going to roll the United States the way that the Iranians rolled the United States 3 years ago.
I think this president made that clear in his first year in office. I really do. He served notice that he is not in any part in the order of succession of the incompetent presidents that we've had in office. Think about this. 3 presidents in a row. 3 of the worst presidents we've had in our country's history. That is Clinton,
bursting on the deep state,
Bush,
everyone
and that
involved.
is Obama. And this country is very, very lucky that this is our president now.
Right, and he understands the art of the deal. He also understands the need to prioritize America first in these negotiations. And he's also talking about how important this is for the world. He's exercising leadership on the world stage. I remember going to Israel in August of 2015, meeting with Bibi, and it's saying, this guy was reluctantly the leader of the free world. We don't have one right now. Right now, we have a leader of the free world, and he's our president.
Absolutely. Congressman Lee Zeldin, good to have you with us.
Great to be back.
Thank you. Well, lying Obama intel chief James Clapper just can't stop himself. He runs his mouth even as Spygate blows up around him, and he validates many of the charges against him. We'll have reaction to his latest comments from former FBI Assistant Director James Kallstrom. He joins us here next. You don't want to miss a moment. We'll be right back. If you were in presidential election for Donald Trump, the former Obama intel chief's supposed bombshell comment contradicting the view of the entire intelligence community's formal assessment released after they thoroughly investigated the matter last year. And joining us now, former FBI Assistant Director, great American, and terrific friend of this broadcast. Good to see you, James. James Kallstrom.
Nice to be here, Lou.
Let's, I mean, I can't even believe the nonsense.
It's unreal.
From a former NDI.
Yeah. Does he forget what his testimony was before the Congress?
I guess he does. And I don't think it matters to him one whit whether he's caught in a lie or not.
Yeah, the man needs some psychiatric help.
And what about James Comey?
Comey is, we've been talking about, at least I have, among others, for about a year and a half now on Comey. Mm-hmm. And he's the guy with the biggest attitude And the biggest, he puts himself on this huge pedestal. The ego is just unbelievable. Yet, he has no common sense. And you know, to think that he could pull off this whitewash of a fraudulent investigation on Hillary Clinton, when the President Obama himself on at least 2 occasions said, there's no evidence against her. She's done nothing wrong. I mean, you'd have to be a moron not to know that that was just a phony thing from the very beginning.
Yeah, not to understand the dog whistle from the President of the United States about his former Secretary of State. He couldn't have been clearer. I agree with you.
Yeah.
And for the most obvious, I think the most obvious pay-for-play scandal in this country's history is the Clinton Foundation. And for the FBI to permit itself to conclude that they're not going to have an investigation, then try to sell the nonsense that, don't worry, we got it under control out in the Little Rock Bureau.
Well, it wasn't the FBI wasn't investigating the Clinton Foundation. I've called it, you know, a bigger RICO case than the mafia,
right,
quite frankly. You know, more sophisticated and more money involved. You know, and it wasn't that the FBI agents didn't want to investigate it. It's, you know, these 5 or 6 or 12 or 15 or 20 or whoever with this number of sycophants in Washington.
Is going to be a much larger than we.
Maybe it's 50, but I'll tell you right now, Lou, it's not the thousands of agents that are out there. I hear from tons and tons of these people. They are so upset about what is going on. You know, and some of your guests on this show, who I think I respect, you know, have talked about turning over the FBI to the Marshal Service. I think that's really a crazy idea. Everyone has their own idea, but that is not anything that should ever happen. We need new leadership. We need discipline. We need to get rid of the top-ranking people in there right now and bring a leader in there that can motivate and discipline the agency. That's what needs to happen.
Here's what I think, and I'd like to get your judgment about the future of the FBI as an institution.
Yes.
I personally believe it depends on how many agents step forward and say, under subpoena, what truly happened. If there isn't that residual within the rank and file of the FBI, I think that the institution is doomed. And by the way, I've got sitting here with the greatest respect and affection for you. I have to say that if they don't step up here, that they deserve that institution to be absolutely swept aside.
Well, I believe the vast majority of those that have knowledge, that have a reason to step forward, other than what they see on television every day. Yeah. And that's a small number, because Comey and those other sycophants brought that investigation and those other investigations close hold. You know, the agents themselves and the field officers, it was all taken away. I mean, they called up the New York office and shut down the Clinton Foundation investigation. Right. They shut it down in Little Rock. It's not the agents that are out there. It's this group of people that perpetrated this fraud on the country and thought they could get away with it. I mean, it's just it's unbelievable what we're doing to a fine institution. I spent most of my adult life there. You know, I know what people go to work for every day there in the FBI. You know, and it's a shame that this has happened, that we've put a series of bad leadership, and I'll include Bob Mueller in that.
Absolutely. I mean, Mueller and
Comey was a disaster.
Comey, both working in the most highly politicized administration. They politicized the Justice Department, the FBI, the Internal Revenue Service. The list goes on.
There's
no part of that government they didn't politicize.
Obama politicized the entire government.
Yeah.
You know, and he filled it with sycophants, and the people would succumb to the Stockholm Syndrome. And, I mean, it's just a tragedy what went on. You know, and guys like Brennan and Clapper and Comey.
How did we ever create, how could they
John Brennan, I mean, what a
this
horrible.
Is a man who exudes evil.
Yeah.
I mean, all you have to do is watch the man.
I know him. I can tell you that's a good feeling on your part, because he's really a psychopath, that guy. You know, and all his rantings and ravings and threatening people, you know, we got to clean this thing out.
Including the President of the United States.
Including the President of the United States. And here we've got the Deputy Attorney General threatening people. I mean, what is this? Yeah. Here's a guy who signed one of the renewals on the fraudulent Pfizer application. I mean, what is going on here?
And today we don't even know whether the Gang of Eight, the heads of the House Intelligence and Oversight Committees, actually got to see the documents of origin leading to the special counsel. We don't we don't know whether they were just briefed about it or were they
right, who knows?
Patted on the head. And
I mean, this conspiracy's been working for a long, long time.
Yeah.
You know, and this getting Donald Trump, whenever there was an inkling that he was going to win this thing, you know, there was a fifth column, a strong fifth column, that, and they're still there today. They're still there today.
You know, I keep saying to folks, and I will continue to say to folks, you know, it's not just that this president has had the guts and the intelligence to drive this, but to imagine what he withstands every day, and has had to withstand from the moment he ran for this. Yeah. For this
I've known him for 43 years. And
for him to stand up like he has, this country.
And he's never not going to stand up.
Oh.
No matter what happens with these fools.
I believe that wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
Jim, it's great to see you, and
God bless you, Lou Dobbs.
God bless you, James Colstrom. Thanks for being here.
Yes, sir.
Be sure to vote in our poll. Do you believe the only effective policy to end Kim Jong-un's nuclear threats and provocations is a use of military force? We'd like to hear from you. Cast your vote on Twitter at Lou Dobbs. Up next, the Border Patrol steps up its response to a crisis on our southern border with help from the Trump administration. We'll have the full report for you here next. We're coming right back.
Insurance.
Dems push for amnesty and embrace murderous MS-13 gangsters. The Trump administration is focused on supporting our Border Patrol as they confront a crisis on our border. Fox News national correspondent William LaJeunesse with the latest from the Rio Grande in Texas.
How much we got left over here, the other runners?
Just after takeoff, the calls pour in.
I'll come down low and I'll spread it open.
Agents need help tracking 4 separate groups.
We're 60 miles north of the border. This helicopter just flushed out a group of 16.
You see how they all run in different directions. That puts them at a great risk. If we miss one of these individuals, now they're stranded out here by themselves.
Carla Provost is the first woman to head the Border Patrol.
The Rio Grande Valley is definitely our busiest area along the border.
Down 2,000 agents nationwide, Provost welcomes help from the National Guard.
Over the last few years, our attrition has been outpacing our hiring. So this is a good stopgap measure, having the Guard here.
She wants 8 National Guard helicopters here and more guardsmen monitoring cameras.
I mean, they're operating with our cameras and our technology, bringing their own sensors to bear and doing it in the same way that we do on the border.
Those cameras caught this group of Central Americans crossing the Rio Grande.
We're averaging about 500 a daily average. It really takes up a lot of our manpower.
According to CBP, 80% of those apprehended in South Texas are Central Americans, most seeking asylum.
And yes, he's going to try to see what he can do to stay in the States.
Agents say the problem is they're so focused on processing families and unaccompanied minors, vast areas are left unprotected.
That the 86 individuals were illegal aliens, 4 of which were unaccompanied children.
Police and border agents stopped this semi crammed with immigrants who poked a hole in the roof to escape.
As long as they're going to make money off of human smuggling, off of drug smuggling, they're going to keep doing it.
Catching illegal immigrants is one thing, but releasing them, officials say, is a much bigger problem, which President Trump has vowed but has yet to solve. Lou?
William, thanks very much. William LaJeunesse reporting from the Rio Grande. Well, a big part of all that is the chaos on our border is, and not many people talk about this, corruption, and great corruption on both sides of the border. Murderous cartels making $500 million a year smuggling just illegal immigrants, as much as $10,000 per illegal immigrant. The rate of children being abducted so illegal immigrants can pose as families has risen 900% over just the past year. On Wall Street today, stocks closed lower. The Dow down 75 points. The S&P down 6. The Nasdaq down 2. Volume on the big board, 3.2 billion shares. Median household income rising up 3% since President Trump took office, the highest level in nearly a half century. And a reminder to listen to my reports 3 times a day, coast to coast, on the Salem Radio Network. Facebook's privacy scandals worsening by the day. Facebook now accused of conducting mass surveillance through its apps. A California court case alleges Facebook collected users' photos, texts, and even their location. Up next, a left-wing D.C. bishop calls America First heresy. Pastor Robert Jeffress vehemently disagree, and he joins us here next.
Hi, I'm Todd.
The bishop who was amongst those speaking at the UK royal wedding claims President Trump's America First message is a theological heresy. Bishop Michael Curry will lead tonight a candlelight vigil in front of the White House. It's going to start within the next hour, we're told. 1,000 people are expected to show up. And that's kind of annoyed our next guest, a good friend of this broadcast, a great American, Pastor Robert Jeffress. He's pastor of the First Baptist Dallas Church and a Fox business contributor. Great to have you with us, Pastor. I mean,
thanks, Lou.
You know, I would think the bishop would be a little more concerned about himself. Isn't the monarchy a relic of the past? Isn't that something we're supposed to move past there? I don't know. What do you make of it?
Look, I think Bishop Curry and these other pastors tonight, they're sincere, but they're sincerely wrong, Lou, about their understanding about what the Bible says about government. Yes, we're to do what the bishop says and follow the way of love individually. We're to love each other, forgive each other, turn the other cheek. But government's never commanded to do that in the Bible. Government's supposed to look out for the protection of its citizens. And I think instead of protesting tonight, these pastors ought to be having a prayer meeting and thanking God that we have a president like Donald J. Trump who is willing to do whatever it takes, standing up to Kim Jong-un, pulling out of that disastrous Iran deal, securing our borders. He's willing to do whatever it takes to fulfill his God-given responsibility of protecting this country. And by the way, he is fulfilling that responsibility masterfully.
I couldn't agree more, and I think most Americans agree. And it's interesting that the bishop doesn't want to talk about black unemployment in this country being at a historic low. Doesn't want to talk about the Hispanic unemployment rate being at a historic low. This is a president who promised prosperity for all Americans. And by the way, it took him a whole year, maybe a year and 2 months, to deliver on that promise. I mean, it's stunning stuff. And so you've got to believe, and I will say to you, the bishop may be sincere, but as you suggest, he is upside down in his thinking.
Absolutely.
And this is a country that is a democracy. It's a constitutional republic. And then in the UK, I mean, they're celebrating their history to the point that they're suffocating. It's a class-bound society still. And this is every American is an American.
That's right. And there is nothing wrong with putting America first. That's what a government is supposed to do. That's God's responsibility to government. As individual Christians, yes, we put others before ourselves, but government doesn't do that. And Lou, Bishop Curry and these others, they say, oh, this isn't about Donald Trump. Oh, really? Then why are you doing it in front of the White House? I mean, I'm tired of these charges of racism and xenophobia. That is not who this president is. He loves all Americans, and he's causing the boats of all Americans to rise.
Yeah, and it just, I just love this line here. Curry talking about theological heresy. I don't even know where you get that. I don't even know how you devolve that. From the Bible. I don't understand why he thinks that it's anything other than political opportunism for him to show up at they're not princes, whatever they are, Meghan and Harry. You know, it sounds like a movie to me. But the next, by the way, I'm going to get in big trouble with my audience because I know a lot of people love that stuff. I keep thinking about the War for Independence and the War of 1812. And the number of times we've had to bail out the good old England. I have a little trouble. I like the idea of the way we do it rather than the way they do it.
Well, I do too, Lou. And, you know, the left is just falling all over themselves over Bishop Curry and his willing to take on Trump and talk about politics. But criticizes, and the left criticizes the HELL out of me and conservative pastors for getting involved in politics. The left doesn't mind pastors getting involved in politics as long as it's the politics they approve of, and that is rank hypocrisy.
And I love the idea that you are not only involved in politics, but you're on the right side of history. And you're bringing religion to the public square and giving all of us a moral compass to kind of reflect on, even from the public square for a time. And I think that probably a few folks on Capitol Hill benefit as a result. And I know the president benefits with your friendship and your support. So,
well, thanks for giving